Oh, you didn't wind up printing out the revised report for the government installation? Okay.
Mike.
Hi.
Water main care. Okay.
Wait, make it come back.
Stumble into my own speaker.
Where?
So I didn't get a chance to, I emailed you, but I didn't get a chance to work on that email.
Thank you. Good job.
Live?
How about convocation? First I remember deadline was tonight. Do you make any
Yeah, it's normal.
Okay.
We plow
And then I
ourselves.
saw it today, I saw them out there today clearing it out.
Okay, is that something we should talk about and then definitely rule on next week? Is that okay? Do we want to bring that up tonight then?
Yeah, I didn't know.
Talk about
I,
it?
that's the first time.
Oh, well, I don't have a copy. I thought she was gonna make it. All right, that's fine, no problem.
I guess we could just do
We
it
can
during work session,
postpone.
'cause I don't know. Is that all right? Is that okay? Work session, is that okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Also,
Okay, all right, so we'll wait.
Right.
I think you're
But you did
ready to talk about it, you just don't have to keep talking about it.
Metal valve?
But he did.
Picking it up?
Councilor Moore is the chair.
We'll call the meeting of the City Infrastructure Committee for November to order and have a roll call.
Councilor Moore,
Here,
Councilor Gibb,
Here.
Mayor Reed,
Present.
Councilor Armstrong.
Here.
Councilor Kelly.
Here.
Councilor Ensel.
here,
Councilor McFarland.
okay, to start, we'll proceed with the reports from department representatives and discussions with the councilors.
Public Works, like the, Mr. Mike Desager come up and do a presentation about the road paving and projects that we have coming up.
Actually, we don't have any new projects.
Good announcement there, Mike.
hear ye, hear ye.
Masters of ceremonies.
What I'm getting out is just a recap of what we did this season. We were able to complete all the projects that we had talked about in a previous session. The ones that are highlighted yellow are actually the original.
Hey, Mike, could we hold you back for just a second? The city, the assessor's here, and he would just like to finish his report, so he could leave. Sorry to preempt you like that.
So Mike, you're gonna have to get up again after. You're gonna have to get up again after.
Yeah.
I have some things to show you.
Mike, you can run it again, okay?
It's okay.
No, it's okay.
I don't want anybody to think that I walk on water or.
That's it. A becomes before D.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me remind you, for those maybe who weren't here last year, that the city contracts with the county on a cost basis for the assessment services. Last year, the assessment services were billed for $119,243, which was the actual cost. The year before that, for 2019, the cost was $105,843, but that represented a period of time in which there was a shortage of employees, so that's why there is a difference between those two. For the 2020 budget going forward, the projected cost is $125,588 for the contract. The increase over the 2019 is attributed to step increases in the employee contract. So those are obligations that the county has to meet for salary, benefits, and health insurance. That would be a 5% increase over the 2019. Are there any questions that I can answer regarding that?
Are we treated Space Center say our residential plot's the same as any other municipality?
On a per parcel basis, the city, with the contract that was originally negotiated, is higher. We were hoping this year that as part of that contract, if we did get another municipality that came to the county for assessment services, that we would be able to reduce for the city that. There was a municipality that did approach us, we did enter into negotiations, and they chose a different option.
When will we converge to be consistent, or when will they come up to us, or us go down to the
Well,
others?
2020, there'll be a renegotiation of the 3-year contract, so I would think at that point in time, that would be the point where it would be negotiated. Yeah, we were hoping that it would be otherwise for this year, but it did not turn out to be the case.
Thank you. I didn't have any other questions on that.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything? So that's gonna be renegotiated next year, or this coming year, right?
It'll be renegotiated starting for 2021, but it'll be conducted in 2020. Yep.
And as you recall, we are receiving an offset for this 3-year period because of the shared services, so that's why we felt we could sign that agreement 3 years ago when, well, some of you were here when we did the whole consolidation and shared services thing.
5% is a relatively large amount.
Excuse me?
5% is a relatively large amount. Can we anticipate that every year, or is this just?
Well, it depends on how the contract for the employees goes. Their negotiation, I believe, ends next year as well, so, yeah, both will have to be looked at that point in time.
Okay, and is that, let's see, 5% per year, or?
That just happened to be what the salary increases, the health insurance increase, and the
Okay.
retirement benefit increase
Okay,
were.
it includes all that.
That includes all
Okay.
that, yep.
Okay, kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it wasn't like the employees received the 5% increase.
Right,
I'm
right.
sure they would have been delighted with that, but
Yeah.
it was a 5% increase in the cost to the county
That's-
for those employees.
That makes a lot of sense when you explain it like that. Thank you.
Do we have such increases in personnel in our departments, that degree of increase?
5%, we usually manage to be lower, but only because we're managing healthcare costs very aggressively. We're self-insured, as you know, and I think the county hasn't had quite that luxury, some
They do not.
larger healthcare increases lately.
If
Thank you
not,
very
I'll
much,
bid
Doug.
you adieu and let you get back on to the other business.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public Works Department, Mike, get up
But before that, I want you to know, if you ride around the oval on the base, we have the no parking signs put up. So you can take a look at those, see where they are. It looks pretty good. I got some pictures, but take a look at that, okay? And we've had 2 water breaks on Lake Country Village, and we took care of one last night, and we got another one we're gonna take care of. Just to let you know, okay?
thank you.
Michael, step on.
Just real quick, we'll give you a recap. We completed our road resurfacing work for the year. What is highlighted in yellow are projects that were actually on the original capital 2019 plan. The ones that are not highlighted are ones we added due to performing well, particularly on Cornelia and South Catherine Street. We were able to, at the very end, get Adirondack Lane and Bowman, do an overlay job on that. So we've done, I think, if you counted up, 12 streets this year. So I think it's a pretty good thing we did. We still probably haven't turned the corner just yet as far as the potholes and what have you. We'll have maybe one more rough year, and I think by the end of next summer, we should be in pretty decent shape. The worst has been hit, though. Couple notes here. You'll see railroad crossings. Those are big. why the square footages and the tonnages of asphalt we put down are not very big. The simple fact that we were able to get the approaches done to 3 of our crossings in the city, Miller Street being the biggest one.
Which is, it's very nice.
Yeah, but there's a lot more to the story. The story is, in the old days, we used to be able to work with CP Rail within the right of way, but now the way the rules have changed, there's a whole permit process, special insurance for the contractors. Fortunately for us, we carry enough insurance, which we don't have to get a rider. And then there's also a rail guard. We were able to work and coordinate. I was able to find out from Miller Street and also Route 22, which CP went and did that without us knowing, and they made a mess of it, but we were able to go back in and fix the approaches. So we were able to avoid probably about $20,000 per crossing in permits, right of entry fees, and insurance. So that's a big one. We saved a lot of money there, and those are ones we squeaked in. So is there any questions at all on this part of our program? Okay. The other thing we have ongoing, obviously, is Protection Alley. We're right down to the wire here, but I'm pretty confident that by the end of next week, we'll have it paved, and we should be good. I'm gonna turn it over to Andrew now. He has a couple updates on some things he's working on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
So the first one is just going to be a quick update on the PSAP grant. So we have some design already completed from CNS Engineers. So basically what I'm giving you here is an aerial overlay. That shows the existing conditions. The page behind each aerial overlay is CNS's design for each of the 5 intersections. So they've completed the design. Today they sent us the draft package to be sent to DOT for approval. It's a 137-page document that I will review. Any notes, they'll make changes, they'll send that to DOT for approval. Once DOT approves that, then we can go ahead and put it out to bid.
Do you mind just orienting us a little bit?
Yep, so the
Long
first one is the Cornelia Street, Broad Street intersection.
Right, and that's coming out of Walgreens.
Yep, so
right
that's coming out
there.
of Walgreens. All of them are top of the pages to the north.
Okay.
So that's the first one.
Yep.
Second one is the intersection of Cornelia Street and Prospect Avenue. The hospital would be your upper right-hand corner of the page. The third one is Cornelia Street and Beekman. Hospital would be to the upper left-hand corner of your page. Next one is Cornelia Street in North Catherine. St. Peter's Church is upper left-hand corner. And then the last one is Oak Street in Brinkerhoff, and that would be the city library in the upper left-hand corner of the page.
Okay. So what's the plan?
So the plan is I'll review the draft scope document, make sure that everything is up to par with that, and then that'll get sent to DOT for their approval. DOT, once they have approved it, will give us the go-ahead to put it out to bid for construction. So hopefully we'll have a late winter, early spring letting for construction with a summer construction for all of these intersections.
So you're gonna put like a little island?
Yeah, so the
in-
first, that's really the biggest one is the Cornelia Street and Broad Street. So what they're gonna do is put a mountable curb island in because it's such a large crossing. Very similar to the one at intersection of South Platte and South Catherine Street. This one will actually have a sidewalk that goes through it with a push button in that.
Okay.
The rest of them are all really just adding additional crosswalks. The Cornelia and Prospect only has 2 crosswalks, so they'll add an additional 2, so each road crossing will have, yeah, so there'll be 4 total. It'll be adding all push buttons to the signalization there.
Okay.
Cornelia and Beekman, all the crosswalks are there, but there's no push buttons, so that'll be push buttons added. Same with Cornelia and North Catherine, and same thing with the Oak Street and Brinkerhoff. Any questions on PSAP?
What does PSAP stand for?
Public Safety, Administration something or other. Off the top of my head, I don't know what it is. I probably got it in a folder.
It all seems to be related to making pedestrian.
Pedestrian
crossings.
Safety Act,
Access.
access something, yeah. So it's all for pedestrian
Program,
safety.
plan,
Yeah, plan, pedestrian safety action plan.
Is there grant money for this?
This is a grant from the federal government. This is the unicorn. This was supposed to be an 80-20 grant, and they waived the 20% and made it a 100% federally funded grant. So
What a
we have
sucker.
no local match for this grant.
Wow,
Price
wow.
is right.
Yes, exactly.
That's real,
what was
real
the
great
total
thing.
grant?
580,000, I believe. Probably about 576, I think it was.
How did you find out about this grant?
This was actually a grant that was applied for by somebody prior to me. When he left, I took it over.
Excellent.
Well done.
Okay. Next one, which is on our agenda, is the Cogan Avenue design. Cogan Ave has been something that's been on the agenda since 2016, got pushed off, and I believe it is now time to go ahead and design it and reconstruct it. So what you have before you tonight is a proposal from CNS Engineers for $116,000 for design costs. That would include everything from Cornelia Street to Park Ave West. The $116,000 is basically your max. So we have the potential to go less. Basically, $116,000 would get us water line replacement, sanitary, and storm line replacement. I don't know that we need to do all three of those. We're going to investigate that here in the next couple days. But if we approve the $116,000, whatever we don't need, they won't bill us for. So you're basically a do not exceed of $116,000 for this project.
Just for design,
Just for design, yes. Yep, that's correct.
the actual project will cost.
Yep, you'll have the project and project management portions, and that'll be later on. So the reason, this is actually supposed to be on the 2020 capital plan. The reason why you guys are voting on the design now is because if we don't start doing design now, that means it won't get constructed until 2021. So we want to get the ball rolling for the design now, so we can start construction in early summer and get it done before snow flies. Any
You guys
questions?
done a lot of this in-house. Why is this particular project more complex?
Because this is more than just a mill and resurface. So there are stormwater issues with this project. So basically, we have to hire a professional engineer to do a design for stormwater system. So that is not something that we can do in-house, so we hire a third party to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay,
I
thanks,
said
guys.
to Mr. Brody the other day, just make sure you take a look at the capital plans. Just make sure that things you really want in 2021 versus 2022. For instance, I think you one time had Mason in 2022, you moved up to 2021. So just make sure, since they're gonna be passing their budget pretty soon with the capital plan, you just have it as you propose, and
Yep.
they can interact with you on that.
Thanks, guys.
I actually just had one question, not for you, Andrew, actually for Mike, going back to the resurfacing. On the sheet you disseminated, you put down what the budget was for those. Have we hit budget with those, under budget?
As far as the tonnages go on the asphalt, I know that Andrew and I were on all the jobs, we came in either on or below the tonnages estimated for the projects. The timetable, as far as contracted work, was all below. Obviously Cornelia Street was a big one, Cornelia South Catherine, we really performed well on. Some of the others a little bit slow, the rail crossings were very slow. You're gonna find the Miller Street crossing most likely will be a little bit above what we had estimated, just due to the fact that we extended the limits. We had the opportunity when we got in there with CP to pave more and do more, and also get out of the right of way, so in the future, we'll wanna continue north and south, we do not have to get involved with Canadian Pacific.
Okay.
But as of right now, we're still waiting for some incoming bills. I hope to put together a better spreadsheet than we've been busy the last couple of days, giving you the final tallies, but I don't think I know we have not exceeded the overall capital budget for resurfacing.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions on that person? Something I'd just like to bring back up, you know, we have two buildings, one at the beach that the tree fell on, and the other one, up by where the old base marina used to be. I think I don't know if we have done anything with that yet, but I think at some point we need to get those off the books and either tear them down or fix them or whatever we want to do with them. But, I know we had brought them up earlier in the year, and I guess we kind of dropped that, so I'd like to revisit that at some time to see what we're gonna do with them. I don't know if you guys in Public Works had any assessments on those buildings, whether they are worth keeping or not.
Okay. And then I revised it, adding what you had suggested.
So,
The old base marina building, that's something that we had, before you were counselor, Jeff, that we had a asbestos survey done, we got the general estimate for that, and chose not to move forward on it. I made a call to get an updated estimate on it, to what it would be to take it down. And then we did get cost to repair the roof at the Anderson building, where the tree fell on it, and that was forwarded to Matt.
Yep, and I was gonna get an estimate for what the demolition would be, just to present the council with some options before we asked you to decide which way you wanna go with that. Which I don't have yet.
okay, just didn't want that to languish out there forever.
Well, Mike tried a couple of years back to get that base marina building torn down, and it's no avail. Sometimes things are out of our hands.
Okay, that's something we need to look at some point.
Can I just backtrack for one quick moment? I was trying to recall what this Girl Scout troop had wanted to meet about, and I thought I recalled that it was the intersection of Cornelia and Prospect. And we haven't been able to meet. She asked for me and Lauren Eastwood to meet with them to figure out solutions for it. So if you could just send me the attachment about the plan for that intersection, I can forward it to them. Thank you.
I just had, I know I mentioned this to you briefly, Mike. I got a call from a constituent on Tuesday when we had the snowstorm. It was about 10:30 or so, and they're on the dead end of Palmer, and they hadn't been touched yet, so he kind of called me. I wasn't home, but my wife had to bear the brunt of the complaint, and therefore I got it even worse when she had to take it. It was, she said he called probably around 10:30
On
Oh,
Tuesday.
in the morning or in the
Yeah,
afternoon?
in the morning. Yeah, he said that the street hadn't been touched yet.
The dead end.
The dead end on Palmer off of Bailey.
Well, that's about the time we should be starting to catch up, based on the snowfalls.
Okay.
Things back off around 8 o'clock, so that's normal. We're gonna get some of that. And we're still cleaning up, we cleaned up today, and we'll be cleaning up probably for, unless the temperature's gonna melt some of this stuff off.
We'll give it a look.
Okay, thank you. I said I would mention it.
Was there anything that water or wastewater had to report?
of course.
There's always something going
Well,
on.
something good.
So at the wastewater plant, the dewatering and primary clarifier upgrades, that design is complete. And those plans are in at the state, and we're waiting for approval from them. Once we get approval, we put those out to bid. It'll be pretty good timing. Because by the time we get through the bid process and awarding contracts, we'll be moving into a little bit better weather. The Cumberland Avenue Pump Station CSO upgrades, that construction contract's been executed. All the shop drawings are being reviewed. The contractor's done some exploratory test pitting to verify where utilities are and to see if there's any interferences that couldn't be found during design, and there is a utility conflict that we found that we're trying to work through right now. So I'm not sure what that's going to mean about schedule, but I'll give you more information as we learn about that. Still waiting to hear from DEC on the Water Quality Improvement Program grant application we put in to upgrade the CSO at the Commemoration Footbridge. And we're also waiting on the water side for the Water Infrastructure Improvement Act grant application decisions to be made. The big update on the wastewater side is the mitigation project. There's a number of components to that. One of them is odor control upgrades. The alternatives analysis is complete, and based on the alternatives that were available and costs and benefits, we should be looking at covering the influent channel that comes into the wastewater plant and covering the primary clarifier. We're also going to be taking the air from the influent channel and the primary clarifier, along with air from the influent building that's presently enclosed, but it's just discharging into the atmosphere. We're going to take all that odorous air and run it through a new odor scrubbing system. So you'll be seeing a proposal for the final design for that within the next couple weeks. And then we'll move into design and construction. We're probably looking at late summer, early fall for construction of those things. That also includes a new disinfection building, which will be on the north side of the plant. It'll move some of our chemicals that are presently stored on the south side and pumped all the way up to the north side. It'll move them all up there right where they're usually applied. And it also involves the demolition of kind of a ratty old metal building on the southeast corner of the plant that houses some of the chemicals right now. So we'll be getting rid of that to make that south end look better and putting a new disinfection building up on the north end where it makes a lot more operational sense. And we're planning to have the first public workshop on the architectural upgrades on December 12th. So what that will be is to introduce this project, the architectural upgrades in particular, to the public and start to obtain their input. The two goals of the architectural upgrades are not just to make the plant look pretty and nice, but to make it look so nice and interesting with other recreational elements like maybe an interpretive center built into it, that it becomes a destination. So it'll bring more people to the waterfront to use and enjoy that. And it's also an opportunity for Plattsburgh to make a statement about who it is and where we're going. So we're going to be looking at some themes like, all right, let's celebrate the past of Plattsburgh and who Plattsburgh's been. Let's celebrate who we are and where we are now. But it's also an opportunity to say, through architecture, here's where we're going in the future and here's what we're hoping to be. Probably over the last 30 or 40 years, a lot of public works projects have been very, what I'll call utilitarian. It's very straightforward, low cost, and all that kind of stuff, and that's great. Got to keep an eye on the money. But historically, for hundreds and thousands of years, large public works projects were actually works of art. When you think about some of the big train stations and buildings and things that were built, there was a statement about the culture. This is really our opportunity to make that kind of statement because we've got the grant money and the low-cost funding to be able to put into that. And the state has specifically said that's kind of what they want to see. The architectural part of this upgrade came out of the LWRP, all the waterfront development money, which included full use and enjoyment of waterfronts, including aesthetic resources. So this is probably a once in every few generation opportunity. So you're going to be hearing a lot about, okay, destination and statement. So those are the types of things that we all need to be thinking about and we need to get the public thinking about so they can weigh in, so we can pull this all into focus, so we can get it designed and get it constructed.
What is the timetable for the project?
Okay, that one's a little more fluid. We're going to have this initial meeting on the 12th. We're going to get feedback and ideas and input from the public. That's going to get conveyed back to our architects, and they're going to start to draft up some concepts. And hopefully within, maybe a month or so, have another public workshop where they come and present, all right, here's what we're thinking about developing in more detail based on what we heard. What do y'all think? So I would expect at least a couple more public workshops of that nature. But if we're doing good work and getting good ideas and it's taken a little longer than we hoped, we should invest that time. The architectures, we're trying to set it up so that the architectural improvements can proceed parallel to and somewhat independent from the odor control upgrades and the primary clarifiers and the dewatering. So, for instance, the new disinfection building in the north end of the plant, it's just going to be a standard cement masonry block building to start, so we can get that designed and maybe even into construction. And then once we finally decide on the architectural theme for that specific building, we can then apply the facades and whatever other elements that we decide we want.
So we discussed this earlier, but it's important for us to very clearly communicate expectations to the farmer's market and work hand in hand. This isn't an isolated project. Now all of a sudden it's a project that's tied really closely to other projects we're working on.
Right.
Which is a change in what you were doing a year ago, because at that point it was relatively isolated.
Yeah, now we know where farmers markets go, and they seem like they're resigned, for better or worse, that that's where they're going. I've had a couple groups of them come through the plant for a tour and some discussions about, hey, here's what we're doing for odor control. Here's what we're doing for process upgrades. Here's what we actually do down here. I felt it was really productive. And one of the observations that they made was how much activity, recreational activity, was already going on down there while they were doing the tour and walking the grounds and all that. There were people walking their dogs and throwing frisbees and sitting outside reading and tanning and all that kind of stuff. So I could kind of see some of them being like, hey, there's already people down here really enjoying what's going on around the wastewater plant, and it doesn't seem to be bothering them. So we're trying to move that discussion and that relationship into, all right, how do we draw people down, to teach them about wastewater and water and enjoy our architecture. But while they're down there now, they go into the farmer's market. And when people are at the farmer's market, we want to try to set it up so that after they're done there, they're coming over to hopefully enjoy what we've got going on. So we're really trying to build this into a collaboration where we're helping each other out. So I think we made some good work heading in that direction. They didn't seem to be overly concerned, at least the people who were there, overly concerned about odors and noise and that kind of thing. They were really focused now on getting down there and getting up and running and making sure that things happen on schedule. And from what I understand, everything down there is progressing, stuff's on schedule and all that. And there's backup plans in place for if the unexpected happens, which can happen during any construction project, that they can still run their business. So based on the people I talked to, they seem to, be somewhat, maybe they were reluctant initially about the move, but trying to focus on the future.
That's good news. Yeah.
On the drinking water side, I think I might have shared with you before that we installed 3 test wells out around Mead Dam, 4 test wells. 1 was a dud, 3 looked relatively promising. So I'm working with our hydrogeologist now to decide whether we want to go into developing a large yield production well on one of those or do a little more exploration in some other areas. So hopefully within the next month or so, we'll be able to say, all right, here's how we really think we should proceed. Because what's going on at the same time is we got draft reports from Schnabel Engineering, who's looking at Mead Dam and its stability during seismic earthquakes, and the total safe yield of the water system as a whole. Just got draft reports on the safe yield and the deformation analysis. So we're going to be taking a look at that in conjunction with the test well possibilities and saying, all right, here's the direction we think we should go. So sometime in the next probably 4 to 6 weeks, we'll want to have maybe the next infrastructure meeting. We'll talk in a lot more detail about what we know and what we think we should do to make sure you're up to speed and concur with the approach. So, questions? Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
I guess we got a little out of sequence here, but we can continue with our budget session from the mayor's office. Is there any?
Gee, I didn't, you print out a?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's in with the agendas.
There we go. pretty simple because it's almost all simply staff. 96% of it is staff. Probably down to from about 90% of it staff at one point, because we used to have a lot more expenses for travel and paper, and Beth has done an incredible job just trying to strip out everything in our budget we can't afford. I pay for all my own travel. You get your paper from the county at a reduced rate, et cetera. So pretty much of a bare bones. In our budget includes my salary, Beth's salary, and also the currently unoccupied community engagement coordinator position. There was an exam for community engagement coordinators, which were bound to the results of that haven't come out yet. So we're unable in any regard to make any movement on that until those results come out. We'd expect those results to come out probably, I would guess, in about the next month, and then we'll reevaluate them.
That position is, that work though is being done on an interim basis?
Well, I'm doing some of it with some of the press, Beth and I are working more on press releases together. Skippy's, of course, doing an incredible job helping out with events. So I think that work is getting done. If anything, as you know, I'd like to see that position be a little more higher level, allowing for a lot more coordination with the council and amongst departments and all that kind of stuff. So we're just doing that on our own regardless. And of course, I think the new committee structure we established probably about 2 years ago, maybe a little bit less than 2 years ago, really helps out a lot, because then we have forums for ongoing communication and stuff. But yeah, I'd like to see us do more in that. I still think it's a pretty important position, but it's also important to really find just the right person. I believe we need a certain amount of maturity in there. We just don't need somebody to write press releases. Heck, we could probably farm that out. That's all we wanted. But to be that person that can bring a lot of different ideas and things together and more effectively communicate, I think requires a fair amount of experience or maturity of some sort. I don't think it's something you can easily test for. I don't really believe it's like a civil service kind of a job. Just like being a counselor or a mayor is not really a civil service kind of a job. But nonetheless, we work with what we have. But I do really appreciate Skippy stepping up to the plate and filling a lot of those gaps.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Thanks.
Thank you.
It's running a little over, so I'd like to bring forward the agenda items 2.1 and 2.2.
I'll make a
Entertain
motion.
motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to move the items to the agenda tonight.
I'll second.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes.
Old business. Is there any new business?
Yeah, actually, Rochelle, did you want to bring up the email that you sent out to us about planting flowers on the meridians?
Well, that was actually discussed at the, oh gosh, I don't have a break tonight. You may say just tonight, but anyway, I had a meeting with the task force, and I brought up that idea, and it would be something that we would need to explore. I just basically described it. I mentioned that you were enthusiastic, but if you're trying to decide
Yeah,
whether,
right.
we could collaborate with the DPW, the idea is that we create an incentive program for people to dig up the median to plant, instead of grass, hardy indigenous perennials that are low maintenance and low water type of thing. I may have conveyed to you that during seasons of drought in California, they've done this, and that people have gotten a break on their water bill, or I can't actually remember the exact nature of the incentive, but just wondered if that might be something that we could entertain. So,
Besides the Rotary, and then also the small, on South Catherine and Platt, where else would there be?
I'm thinking that this would be something that, I'm not talking about public green spaces, I'm talking about the medians in front of people's residences, that they
Between
could.
the sidewalk and
Between
the
the
road.
sidewalk
Between
and
the
the road.
sidewalk and the road?
Is that called a median? Okay, and they could elect, if they were part of this program, to dig it up and maintain with perennial flowers that don't require as much water and maintenance and fertilizer and
Mowing.
Roundup.
And
you
no
know,
mowing.
No mowing, that it would be a low maintenance kind of project. And I assume that it would also mean a reduction in water requirements as well. Do you have some ideas?
It's a possibility, but would it hold up to snow plowing on a pile of snow?
Right, because you would have a lot of salt in that snow.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a consideration.
Also, the insurance liability for them working within our
Right away.
right away.
Usually people have to get permits to work inside of our right of way.
Okay, that's important.
And I would suggest that if we're gonna attempt that, do it on a small scale, maybe try
Pilot.
and see.
Just try to get a few volunteers to see how it would work.
Yes,
Yes.
Right,
those are probably the biggest obstacles right there that we've outlined.
all right.
And
Yeah.
you have to have enforcement, because if you do not take care of it and it starts to look really lousy, who's gonna say, mow
Yeah.
it or clean it up?
I'm thinking about though, looking at the fields that are just wild, none of those look lousy to me. You know, they have asters, they have chicory, they're all kinds, you know, sometimes there's black-eyed Susans, you know, sometimes when Mother Nature takes over, it's pretty spectacular. But anyway, I get your point.
What you're saying is very true for a field or a meadow.
Mhm.
They are beautiful, but what happens sometimes when people try to grow wildflowers, they get interspersed with grass. So every few years, you have to till up the land and
Yeah.
remove the grass and start all over again. So,
Okay,
you know, if somebody's willing to do that, that's great, but
So I do have one more, actually probably the biggest concern.
okay,
90% of homes' water shutoffs are located between the sidewalk and the curb. If you have people going and digging, they're gonna start tearing those out. And then when they have an issue with their water line, I can't find it to shut their water off. So that would be my concern.
okay.
Is
Yeah.
to try to keep people away from those water shutoffs.
Well, then maybe we can move it over to the grass side, you know?
You know, one of the constituents in my ward dug up his side yard, not the section, between the sidewalk and the street, but his front yard, dug it all up and just
Mine is.
put it
My
down.
old residence, I
Yeah.
did that, and it's beautifully landscaped, and,
I've got actually a number of, homes in my ward, just
Right.
not far from my own home, where people have done that. I love, every time I walk by, I love it.
Normally, your shut off outside is in line with your water meter, it's inside. So if you find your water meter, you go out between the curb and walk, that's where the shut off is for the house. Normally.
Right.
Some places where they're not like that.
well, I think you've sufficiently, discouraged, not in a bad way,
I'm not
but.
trying to discourage.
No, I think
Point
you
out
brought up
the,
a really important point that would kind of prevent us from pursuing that kind of project. But maybe we could consider, you know, ways to encourage,
Just put it on your own lawn.
right, discourage lawns and encourage plantings.
Yeah, I mean, if someone was to do, like, cover mites about road salt and what have you, make
Yeah.
sure that the species, the wildflowers are resilient to that type of.
Exactly.
And then also closely monitor, like I said, I think a small sample set, and, you know, some willing people in the
Mhm.
area maybe.
Yeah.
I wouldn't just go all.
I think you'd also have to make sure that the people, it isn't counterproductive, whereas, oh, I planted flowers, I need to water these. And
Right,
they're
you
watering
have
them
more
more than
water.
they are their grass.
Right. You might
Yeah.
have to recommend a certain species of plants that don't require as much water. I have no idea. This was just a brainstorm, and Elizabeth got really excited about it.
I did.
so.
Well, because I have a problem on my property with people coming from behind my property, because I live on a corner lot, and they bring their dogs around the corner between my fence and the road, and let their animals use my yard, and they don't pick up. So if I go out to mow the lawn, first thing I always do is I take the shovel, and my neighbors across the road were laughing. They're like, out with the shovel again, yeah. I said, well, maybe this would discourage that.
Yeah.
I have to do the
Flowers
same,
there.
but it's not because of dogs.
Oh.
Yeah. Did you want to bring up the recycling question? Had we decided
Oh.
that we were gonna
Yes, we did. say-
initiate the conversation?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, as part of the Climate Smart Communities program, we've begun to talk about how we might expand recycling in the city. First of all, to begin to collect, and thank you very much for your input on how we might go about collecting at public events with a pilot program at the holiday parade. And I know Ethan's been discussing that with you, and we hope we can accomplish that. So that'll be the first step. But we're also interested in expanding recycling, and I know you're in on this too, to office buildings, but not only those items that you normally take in categories to the landfill for free, but also things like office paper. And so we're interested in your views, what the pros and cons of doing that might be. I did investigate by calling Casella to see what they might be able to offer us just in terms of recycling for city buildings. And I spoke to Bill Myers. He's at their facility on the Carbide Road. He was unable to come and speak to us tonight because he had a previous engagement. It was kind of short notice. We had this big idea that we'd have him, and he wasn't able to make it tonight, but he would be very willing to describe how we might go about doing that for the city. The county does that, but they have contract with Casella, and they are provided with receptacles and things that Casella hauls away. So our situation is a little bit different, but I think we're just at the exploratory phase, and I'm interested in your input.
Okay.
It's kind of a moot point now with the recent snowfall, but how did we do in regard to leaves and things in the roadway? 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was almost ready to get out of my car. As I'm driving by, I saw like 3 people blowing leaves into the road.
Nonstop.
Nonstop.
Better than last year.
But I have
Last year, we didn't have an opportunity, and that's a lot of the complaints that the mayor's office received and the councilors received throughout the awards was, is we had an early snow that covered everything up, and so we had no opportunity to clean anything up at all.
And you plow, bangs, bags go everywhere.
But there's an
Especially
opportunity.
Off the curb and the driveway. So Monday, I came to work, and I took his truck, and I ran around the city in areas that I thought were really bad, and bagged leaves and branches. I threw in the truck and took them to the yard, and some places, like, there were so many bags and stuff, I just put them up behind the curb on the line. So that's why we did Monday.
I happened to have a grill cover blow away, and I ran over it with my snow blower and spent an hour and a half cutting it away from my tines.
I get a bag from your place.
Maybe we should encourage our residents to not bag them and to spread them. You know, I know they blow. I know that there's problems with drains, but you know, that's natural compost. You can insulate your plants by piling on the leaves, you know, and just letting them go free. What's your view on that? Would it be a problem in terms of drains and so forth?
Yes, but
Okay.
that would be a really big issue.
Okay,
We send crews around just to clear drains.
Right.
Several times a week.
You get a heavy rainstorm, it's real dangerous.
I see. Okay.
It's the nature of the business. I mean, there's no perfect system. I know that actually a couple employees, I think it was on the news a couple weeks ago, one of the Vermont communities had a 2-week window where people had to have all their leaves out. Well, depending on the species of tree,
Okay,
the
yeah.
direction of the wind, how hard the rain, the snow, who knows if you're gonna have leaves in that 2-week period.
Right.
It'd be great if we could tell them, and then we could stop operations, create a program, but we literally will put out a truck, at least one dedicated truck a day with a couple pickers, and then as refuse workers come off, depending on the load, they'll go out, and, you know, our people people in our office receive phone calls on a steady basis, you haven't got one of these, you haven't got one of these, we're getting to you.
I guess my
You haven't
question
picked
is
up my
how, if
leaves
we,
for
if we
free.
witness people doing that, who do we call? How's it enforced if we see somebody doing it?
Police department.
And I think too, it's not only leaves they bag, it's trees they cut up, branches, and they put them in bags. So,
Yikes.
we have to get those.
We have 2 guys that spent 3 hours at 1.5 houses just taking leaves, bags of leaves up.
Wow.
Joey.
We did a lot better this year last year, the weather was helpful, so, to answer the original question, we did pretty decent, so this spring should be better than last spring.
But that, I mean, that's just with bagged leaves. I'm talking about
Leaves in
people
general. No, leaves
in the
general.
road. I saw the sweeper and things out often.
Yeah, let's get that blow on it.
Just not enough hours a day to chase those people around, for us at least, we're not an enforcement agency.
No, I
They
know.
would pick them up, we're very fortunate, our super drivers are very proficient, they know where the trouble areas are, they'll work those areas, we work with them, do the best they can to get those involved.
Just happened, it was a Saturday, and I saw it within 5 minutes, 3 people blowing a huge number of leaves out onto the road.
I can give you an update on some of the old business that various councils have emailed me about to make sure we present to you. As you know, we only have 12 more days before the budget is finally approved. We have been incorporating a running total in the Common Council budget, which are the modifications in my budget, and Chamberlain Marks has that ready whenever you read. I think the only things that aren't in there, I know that he and Building Inspector McMahon are putting the finishing touches on his budget along the lines of the rental registry that you discussed. So they know where that is. That's budget neutral though, because they expect to make as much revenue as expenses.
Do we have any idea when that may be presented to us, so we can have the public hearing, or?
Well, Dean would have to, it's gonna require passing a local law,
Right.
so I think it's probably gonna have to come as no later than next week, huh, to get it in through this cycle.
Okay.
Rec complex, they're still working on the fees to meet or exceed the goals that you already set. So, but those goals have already been incorporated into Richard's budget. Let's see, we've incorporated all the estimates for your changes into the 5 and 10-year plans, so you can inspect that whenever you wish, but everything's on target. Superintendent Ruff will be providing to you soon a revised water fee schedule, as we discussed, which I think may require a local law or code change. As we're getting in on for this cycle, we can budget for that and still then pass the local law subsequently, but before the end of the year. But then again, that's general fund budget neutral as well, because that's in a separate budget. So everything's coming together. It's ready for your inspections, ready for the finance committee to start overviewing it. And if there's any more additional changes we'll be making over the next 12 days, we'll incorporate those too. The overtime adjustments are all in. Everything we've discussed at this table are now incorporated, and they're all consistent with the various goals.
Is it possible to meet concerning the discrepancy between the fees, increases in fees and the targets?
Well, they're still working on it.
Okay.
They're probably about 90% of the way there.
All right.
Some units are pretty close. One unit's still a little bit ways to go, but they're just gonna need to sharpen their pencil a little bit until they meet. I just instructed them, as you instructed me, to meet or exceed your goals. So after that, it's just a matter of sharpening pencils.
Okay.
Mayor, we also have a question about the building inspector's office. We had some discussion about adding some services at the building inspector's office that include apartment inspections.
Right.
And Joe had indicated that he wanted to hire another person to do that. Is that incorporated into the budget?
They're putting those last finishing details on it, but it'll probably be incorporated next day or two. I think you're working just this afternoon on that a little bit more.
Yes.
Okay, and we're hoping and anticipating that will be budget neutral so that the money you collect with apartment inspections will offset the cost of this new employee. And I I guess also hoping that this new employee can help out with some other duties in the office as well, so you can really take advantage of that person's position and get them to do a multitude of things for you as they become more skilled. I know there's a learning curve in your office. So.
Yeah, there's, what, about a 6 month before, Joe, you said 6 months to a year before they're...
That's pretty accurate, yes.
And will you be able to tell us what will be the hours per week this person will be working? And, you know, is it a 35-hour week or 40-hour week, or that's all going to be part of the?
Yes,
Okay.
that'll be part of the report, yes.
Okay, thank you.
It would be pretty cool if actually you could generate a little bit more on the revenue side, and then I know you've asked before about whether you can move your people up to 40 hours a week and have that little bit more staffing level to do other things as well they haven't been able to get to, so maybe we'll see how all those revenue figures work out over the next couple of days.
Have you decided what the fee will be for inspections?
That'll be a council decision, so it would be set by council resolution.
Okay.
Will there be recommendation, I'm sure?
Yeah, we can, but it's a council action, but yes, certainly.
Okay.
So that's available whenever you want. If you want later on in the common council meeting at the end to have those figures up with Richard's running total with the 5 or 10 year plan, or if you want to talk about it next week. I believe next week is finance, isn't it?
Yes.
So but that's ready at any time.
Okay.
You want to do it next week then? I think that just makes more sense. Yeah.
Do what next week?
What he's saying, he said, you know, Richard could put this all up at the end of the meeting, or could just do it next
Yeah.
week.
I've asked to have a list of all the changes that all of us have individually recommended, so
Mhm.
we can all look at them. And I'm hoping that next week would be the time to do that during the finance committee meeting, so.
Okay.
that'd be one of
Is there
the
a
things
possibility we might have that emailed to us, that report emailed that to us before the meeting?
We can certainly email the tentative council
Yeah.
budget immediately. Yeah, that's
Thank
ready
you.
to go.
And then an itemized list of all the changes that we're about to vote for.
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
I guess, as we're running out of time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh,
The old base marina building is becoming quite a liability for the city. I talked to Chamberlain Marks about if funding available. I think the building should be torn down and got rid of
Mike,
6 times.
Mike,
No funding available.
I just talked to Richard about it, to find out if it wasn't any available, but 6 times the doors were broken and people were in there. There's animals in there, so I just want to make the council aware that's an issue.
Right. And hopefully the jetty someday.
If you have a fire or somebody gets hurt down there,
Yeah.
I check it at least once a week. So, now it's sealed, the road shut off, so,
Well, I've heard reports of criminal activity down there.
yes.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes. Let's then commence with our council meeting tonight. I would like to begin with the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Counselor Armstrong?
Here.
Counselor Kelly?
Here.
Counselor Gibbs?
Here.
Counselor Ensel?
Here.
Counselor McFarland? Counselor Moore?
Here.
I have no comments at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on November 7th, 2019 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Ensel. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending November 13th, 2019 in the amount of $59,007.48 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Have in your packet the traditional reports as well as the update from governance strategy and city operations. And I think being sent to you is also the most recent minutes for the task force, if they haven't already
Right.
gone out.
Right, I wanted to say a few things, so the installation of the or the uploading of the data to the software people has begun. I was just an observer, watching as the accounts were, a chart of accounts was being discussed, and I'm not sure what the timetable is. There was another meeting today, but that's progressing. Then I just wanted to say something regarding the green procurement policy materials you received. I sent you a description of what the task force's goals are regarding development of a green procurement policy. And there are 3 documents that you can refer to in kind of considering what we'll need to do. So one document is the Climate Smart Communities description, the guidelines for a green procurement program. The other is the minutes to which you will refer, item 4, which describes everything that we said at last night's meeting regarding our ideas. And then a sample procurement policy from Waterville for you to examine, and we're hoping for your feedback, and that's been supplied to the department heads for their consideration as well.
Thank you. City infrastructure, Councilor Moore?
We just had our meeting, so we'll not elaborate any further.
Finance and budget, Councilor Kelly.
So it seemed to me that the work session that I got interspersed with the infrastructure committee, which is fine. But we did have some discussion about the assessment office and the mayor's office. So we're pretty much right on track with our budget schedule for this year. Let's see, I have it up here. We were supposed to discuss the parking fund tonight, and we didn't do that. But we've also postponed the budget resolution and vote until the last Tuesday in November, so we have some more time. So at some point, we would like to hear about the parking fund and where it stands, and I think we're pretty well ready to wrap it up.
Counselor, the report on the parking fund, I delivered that last week along with the report on the community development budget.
Okay, I'm sorry, man, I didn't see it.
No problem.
We'll have to go back and look at it. Would everyone do that and ask questions of Matt if you have any questions?
Okay.
Given that, then we're pretty much on schedule, maybe.
Excellent. And by the way, I could have mentioned earlier in my comments, but we can make it now under finance is as you saw, the finance office worked really hard to get the auto bill pay feature in place. It's now in place. I had the privilege of being the first person to sign up for it. It went very smoothly. It only took a couple of minutes per account to sign up. I thought by now, a week later, there'd be hundreds signed up, but Richard told me today there's only about 30, but it's still a very good start. 30 people that won't have to mail anything in or have to go and do something online. It's all automatic, taken out of your account each month on the due date for free. There's no additional cost. And also, we've lowered the fee structure for the credit card transactions to 2.25%. That way, it's more affordable to people who have smaller bills. As you recall before, there was a $4.95 fixed charge, which wouldn't count to 2.25% unless you had like a $200, $250 bill, which very few of us would have, given our very low electricity rates. So that's great. It's working very well. We also talked on doing more things to try to go green and have paperless statements and all that kind of stuff. So we're exploring what the software will do. It'll already tell you when a bill is due if you're on the email sign-up list. So they've really done a good job in modernizing, and I hope that will overall help with the workflow a little bit downstairs as well over time.
Richard, is there an electronic receipt sent out after the bill is paid, the withdrawal is made?
The auto pay, no.
Okay. Is there any way that we might be able to incorporate that into it, or is that part of the program or not, or?
No, it isn't.
It would be on the customer's credit card statement.
Or on their bank statement if they checked it on, I just wondering, I know when I do my credit cards, I get the statement that it's been posted and paid for.
Right, we're trying to do more, figure a way to do more of that, or your bill is now due in 10 days or
Right.
something.
Right.
So we're looking at what kind of features Munis could offer in that, but.
I just think it'd be helpful for somebody that, when the bill is paid and then they go to balance their checkbook and they see how much it was taken and paid for and what date it was applied.
Well, similar to writing a check and mailing your check in.
Yeah, no, I know.
Send out any electronic or receipts at that point.
Yeah.
They're mailed in, either to the lockbox or to the city. If someone comes in person and pays, they get a receipt.
Mhm.
So the auto pay is gonna be the same thing. It's gonna come out of your checking account on the due date for the amount that's on the bill.
No, I just mean, I guess I know some people that, they might be getting a little close on their balances on their checkbook, and so they might put the money in the drop box at night, and then waits a day or two, and it gets posted, and by that time, there's funds in the checking. So that's why I'm saying if the receipt is sent, they have an idea of,
Well, with the auto pay, the date the bill is due, the person's account is gonna be debited for those funds on that date. And if they're not there, it'll be an insufficient funds situation.
right.
So we'll post the payment that didn't happen and then post an NSF.
Yeah.
Add back for the invoice plus a $20 fee.
Right.
And if there's two insufficient funds, situations like that, the person will be on a cash basis for a year, just like any other bounce checks.
Okay.
If someone bounces a check twice with the city, you pay cash for a year.
Mhm.
Electronic notices, yeah, do go out. Past due notices, if you don't pay, they get mailed out every week. So, now if a person has auto pay and insufficient funds show up in their account and then the stuff is posted, they'll get a past due notice sent out. Because that'll say that their bill isn't paid after
Okay.
the due date.
Okay.
Public Safety, Counselor Gibbs.
So we, we just had a conversation in our work session, or I guess it was still part of the DPW and Public Works there, but it looks like we're gonna be looking at another building inspector, and so Supervisor McMahon is working on that with Chamberlain Marks in terms of cost and fees and all of that, and we have a resolution that is going to be put forth, did I use the right word? Local law, one of those. And so that will be forthcoming over the next week or so.
Thank you. Plattsburgh Public Library, Counselor Ensel.
No report at this time.
I don't think there's been any actions for the MLD. Resolve the reports as listed are hereby ordered received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Counselor Armstrong, second by Counselor Gibbs. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. No correspondence with the recommendations from boards at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the bills honored by the Common Council for the week ending November 15th, 2019, in the amount of $849,500.47 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Counselor Moore, second by Counselor Ensel. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. So relatively streamlined agenda tonight, and there is one available that's outside the door. If I'd like to invite any members of the public like to please come and discuss the agenda at this time. Please come forward. Seeing none, let's continue, please.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves from the City Chamberlain to increase appropriations in the 2019 General Fund Community Development Contract Services budget for $8,900 as required by Common Council Resolution dated November 7th, 2019, for costs related to dividing city property located at 52 US Oval.
Moved by Counselor Kelly, second by Counselor Moore, discussion. Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves the mayor to sign an engineering design agreement with CNS Engineering, Inc. for a total of $116,000 for the Cogan Avenue reconstruction project design.
Moved by Counselor Armstrong, second by Counselor Gibbs, discussion. And this was obviously brought up and described by Mr. Jones
Thank
just
you.
a moment ago. Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
No travel requests at this time. Are there any resolutions for initial consideration?
I did send out a sample of the resolution passed by the town. You may have seen it. It was endorsement of the carbon tax law that's going before Congress. And you know, I see the value in doing that. It fits nicely with our objectives as a climate smart community to promote that kind of legislation. If you need me to resend it, I will. I'm not really offering it for initial consideration tonight because I didn't bring a copy of it, but I will try to work with Dean to get it on the agenda or up for initial next week.
Thank you. Any other, or any new business or council reports? Any closing public comments from the public on any issue of mutual concern? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilor Gibbs, seconded by Councilor Ansel. All in favor, or, pardon me, roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Andrew.
Thank you, folks.
Mr. Duran. Please send that. Yes. Okay, thank you. The Girl Scouts will be happy.
Signatures?
Thank you, Ben.
Hello. Whose class are you in?
Mr.